To say that if you were able to instantly have mobile transfers, you straight away competed with the telco to say, I can enable that too. The second part is to innovate the product, is to say that if you had a product that could operate as a wallet, the comfort of a wallet, of course, is to say that I have kept some money aside for my immediate spend, and I don't mind really using that to spend, because it's as much as a wallet. Whatever is in your wallet, you tend to spend. Whatever is in the savings, you like to keep that aside. And so designing your product in such a way that you have a differentiation between what is your running account, current with the account with the client, operating that as a wallet, and a savings account that the customer can segregate, can make a simple difference where the bank tends to do exactly what the telco does, which is to offer the wallet, quick service delivery, no questions asked, because that's what they see as a bank's disadvantage of saying every time I want to open a product, I'm asked questions. Every time I want a service, I have to answer these questions. The next point is to say that if you were to look at the strength of what a bank has got, you are offering all the services that the client wants, which is to say, giving something, for example, like a spend analytics. We're doing these projects for banks where we would say, take in all the information of spend that the client is doing using cards, mobile transactions, etc., and then give spend analytics to say, this is how you spent your money, and then giving financial planning, etc. So the depth of experience that a bank has got to manage the finances of a client is not something that a telco can acquire immediately. And of course, you've been example to it that telco, you can have staff being churned from telcos to banks and banks to telcos. But the fact is that the bank has this huge element of trust, which I think will continue for decades. So I think it's not a right time to write obituaries for banks. Banking will continue, and I think very firmly that banking will continue with banks.
Andrew?
Yes, very interesting topic really in the day. Look, we are all around to look after customers, and customers will make a choice based on the service you provide. You don't see people who make roads trying to get into car manufacturing, yet they're symbiotic at the end of the day. Neither are car manufacturers getting into road building. And I think telcos and banks have to be able to provide a service of high quality to engage with more customers and ultimately make them a successful business. And they need to do it with the core of their business at heart. Because I don't believe a telco can be a bank, or a bank can be a telco. I think in the UK there was a stage where supermarkets became banks. Whoever knew that was possible? You know, you choose a bank why? Because it has great innovation, because it's trustworthy, because it's reliable. Some people will go down the innovation bit, it looks sexy, we must be in that. But if all your money is falling out the back end of the bank, it doesn't make a difference. Banks are, to me, all about trust. I will choose a bank that is, for me, the most trustworthy that I can get to see. Yes, all the other little bits and pieces that they put on the side are good to have to make my life easier. But I'm never going to confuse a telco with a bank, or even a supermarket with a bank at the end of the day. Stick to your core business and do it to the best you can. Then look after your customers.
Excellent. That's nice, Andrew. One last question and then we could break here. See the hands up there. We have two. Okay. Can you pass the mic to the gentleman, please?
First and foremost, thank you for hosting everybody here. Very nice job. Excellent. My name is Fayaz Ali. Actually, customer for very different banks in Kenya. Very good services. So, it's a very interesting topic that is being brought up. You have to understand from a Kenyan perspective, a telco, if you get looking of a telco, we're looking at about just 3 telcos against 47, 45 and one of the telcos has 80% of the mass already with it. Right? So we are looking at a scenario whereby for this telco to now jump into becoming a bank, this is one step away. Okay. So that brings in a bit of confusion from that perspective, because there's a reasonable level of trying to bank in entirety. So there's, in a way, if you look at the thin line between banking and mobile transfers, e-wallets, as this initially disappeared in that sort of a market. And one of the largest banks has about 50% of the population banked with it, plus everybody else is that 50%. From that 50% population, it's also banked in other banks at the same time, right? So just to keep you updated of why it's
very helpful,
at the end of the day.
No, that's very, very useful. That's a very, very interesting insight here. Thank you for that.
Right.
Thank you for all perspective.
The other question that I basically have is in regards to digital movement zero. I think I'll address it right to this question. It's great to have digital movement zero, right? But if I'm looking at the forum, most of the time I come to understand that the strategies are not yet there. Even digital 1.0 strategy has not yet kicked off appropriately, right? And how at the end of the day, get infrastructure has really helped the banking industry to move from where they are, which is 1.0, which is 2.0, by helping them develop the strategy itself, sitting with them and helping them see the light at the end of the day, or at the end of the day.
That's a very interesting one. Rajesh, if you don't mind, we'll also take the question from the lady and then we could answer them together. If you can pass the mic to that lady.
Thank you. My name is Mada from Harvard, Ghana, Africa. Coming from Africa, my interest is in the trends from Ethiopia. I must say that I think you mentioned that you have entered the data and data payment space. I'm not sure if you said that, but if you did, I want to know a bit about the adoption needs. How is it growing or performing in your country? And what are some of the strategies you put in place to drive it in your country? I'm interested in that. And to Rajesh, you did speak about social banking. And I agree that the banking on Facebook, Twitter, and other social media. My question is the security bit of it, because we all know that social media information is for public consumption. People actually take people's faces and put new pictures under them. I don't know what is happening on social media. What is the security level in terms of trying to care and fraud and social banking? You can throw a little light on that.
Interesting. Thank you. Maybe if we can have Alex speak first.
Thank you, my sister from Ghana. I just said we have to work much in enhancing the adoption rate of digital services, banking in the digital arena. And I just want to tell that there are lots of challenges ahead of us, and we have not got a very good adoption rate in terms of digitization. Let me quote 3 items which I hopefully you will also share. In Ethiopia, by policy, there is only one telco which we don't have the kind of challenge that has been referred from Kenya. But our challenge is in quality of service. We don't have any other option. There is nowhere to go apart from the state-owned one telco operator. This has limited the adoption rate from the perspective of quality of service, specifically to the mobile and to the internet banking services. The other, which I try to mention, it is from the regulatory organ, mainly focus on regulating. And there is a very little endeavor invested on the innovation and incubation of such products, which I would like to suggest that here from technology provider companies like Infrasoft should try a way to address this from their side as well, because there are very stringent requirements to launch mobile banking, to launch internet banking and other digital platforms. When it comes to customer experience, as we have been locked for so many years from the international arena. And English is not widely spoken in Ethiopia. We use our local languages. Financial literacy is not as such appreciated in our nation. So our society is not as that of other African nations like Kenya, neighboring Kenyans, to grab into new innovations, new technologies like this. So I can say that we are way behind adoption of digitization.
Thank you, Alex. That was useful.
Thanks. So I'll try and answer both questions, and I think, Martha, it was a very relevant question that you asked from a perspective of saying that when you look at social media banking, is that something that will be secure? If you look at and when we look at strategies for this, no strategy can be a foolproof one, but what you can look back to, saying where has security worked for the banking system, and where has the security worked along with the customer being in line with that. So I could have a very secure system which the customer can't use, which means that it's a failed product. So we've looked at integrating what is open technology with the back-end security. And you know that the industry has got standards like PCI DSS for security for payments. There is PADSS security for looking at applications that are built for transactions and making sure they are certified to be secure. And that is something Intrasoft Tech has invested in to make sure that we are certified for those. Now, importantly, answering the question on social media banking, there are ways to have authentication which will be a deemed challenge response authentication, where for a particular conversation to begin, there would be a need for a challenge from the IT system to say this is what I require, and a response from the client that would sort of authenticate the client to use that service. Now let's take the example of an ATM. It's not very prevalent in, let's say, India, Africa, Middle East, where you have an ATM on the high street facing the wall with an open front. But if you went to UK, right, you are going to stand in Oxford Street and withdraw money from an ATM, pull out the cash, and in front of everyone who's probably watching you, put the money in your wallet and walk away safely, right? And exactly, it would happen in many countries, right? In Ethiopia as well. Thanks, Alex. So when this happens, the security behind such features, one of course is your physical capability to manage the money in the wallet, but the other part is that you use a HSM box in the backend that manages the secure key of your password being maintained securely, where no bank staff has access to that key. So an internal employee of the bank cannot reveal the password and say, guess what, this is the password, circulate it to 10 friends and say, this is what you can do. So we use a combination of such security. So our mobile strategy is to sit alongside the payment strategy for IT security and make sure that if you have a one-time password being generated, make sure it's generated from the HSM machine and not from a separately written algorithm which is predictable or where the employees have control. The second part is to make sure that when you use challenge response, make sure that it is secure, but at the same time, the client understands how to use that security. So a memorable password, for example, mother's maiden name, etc., is quite predictable. And this is the similar security that people use in Google, people use in Facebook and so other social media. And of course, when they say it's their mom's birthdays, you would find every relative calling them by their nicknames, by the names, by the salutations, all of it in the comments. So everybody knows everything about people's lives. We've designed solutions in such a way that it is, when you say Facebook banking, it is not that you're like very much if you put a DP photograph, profile photo on WhatsApp or on Facebook, you put your photographs, the whole world can see it so long as you give them permission. It doesn't operate the same way when you open up your wallet on Facebook. So you're not opening your wallet and saying anybody wants cash, take it off it. There is a method to it to say how secure is the data in the backend. When you look at hacking, and that's a subject that people look at differently, and the approach to hacking has changed over time, where people say that you could have hacking done if somebody comes into your bank and hacks it. Is it possible? Yes, very much. Can somebody hack into any system? You have seen access being taken across the world for any system that claims to be unhackable. I think the important part of a security strategy is to say, once you're hacked, can you minimize the damage of making sure people don't walk out with information and people don't walk out with the funds? And that is what we implement in Facebook banking. People might get a few insights to say that you bank with so-and-so bank. That's the only insight they would have. But other than that, the menu of the social media banking does not come up unless you're clearly authenticated to it. And we are happy to discuss those strategies. We've implemented this across various banks, over 50 banks that use different sort of registerial applications as well as social media applications to do that. And coming to the question on terms of how Intrasoft Tech helps out, we use something as a different approach, and I'm not saying this is a sales technique, but I found this most useful to work with banks in implementing digital strategies. If I went to them and gave the whole lot of what this technology has to offer in the backdrop and talk about various technologies of IBM Watson and algorithms that are in R, Python, and throw all of this information, many bankers would say we really didn't understand that, and maybe that's now scaring me to stay away from all this what you're talking, because I don't have control over it. Our simplicity of offering has been in the consultative mode, where we have used a business use case to say this is what you can do for your client, and this is probably how it will impact your business. These are the things you can take care. So it's a business use case that we put across, and we worked out about 100 business use cases for digital in banking. And this was where we have said that you can build your business on this. Let's look at your customer segment, apply that to the business use cases, and these are what we can put live for you. And it applies same way in most of the other functionalities. If you look at core banking, you put an RFP and say this is what we want. In anti-money laundering, you put an RFP and say this is what we want. And that is because you know what you want. We are just doing the reverse. We are saying we've got a glossary of things that we can provide. Choose what you want, and we will customize a strategy for you and probably an app at the later stage.
Excellent. So with that, I guess we'll conclude this session. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Rajesh. I hope the audience found the session to be interesting, useful, and more importantly, something which you can take away as information for what we are doing. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you. Thanks to all the panelists, Andrew, Alex, and thank you, Ram, for taking the time to moderate this session. We'll have a lunch break now, and when we return back, we will start with the demos. It's always very difficult to sort of have a very theoretical section after lunch. So we'll go with the demos of the anti-fraud solution that we are sort of launching today, or have launched it earlier, but want to talk about the new versions that we have, and also then look at the digital banking demos, which is to maybe about 10 or more demos, but you can select which are the few ones that are useful and pick up those. And then the part of the user forum. So we want to talk about the anti-money laundering product, discuss about what is there as the roadmap for the product, and also some things into saying how are we improving the product and what's there in the future. Followed by cocktails in the evening. So we've got some distance to cover for the day. I would request that if we can all assemble here by 2:30, or rather start the session by 2:30, we'll then be able to cover up on time as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
of cases where there's been instances of fraud, there's cases where people have been losing their vital banking-related information. Banks have realized the need for being much more secure. Not that they're not. It's just that it's now almost an imperative that it cannot be compromised at any cost. And with the way how our networks are connected, the way how our systems are connected, the way how big data is exploding, and the intelligence that goes behind all the dots that they're connected, it's easy, if I may, to determine the pattern of how a user acts and behaves and interacts. And it becomes almost easier for an intruder to know what would it take to penetrate into something like that. So the most secure systems also have given up to that. And that's essentially the reason why red tech is becoming all the more and more important. So talk about anti-money laundering, talk about anti-fraud solutions, just being at the tip of the iceberg of what exactly we need to be there in terms of the right kind of solution. The solutions do exist today, the products do exist, they do the job well, but are they adequate given the kind of threats that we are facing from the industry today? So we have Mihir here who's going to talk about the latest advancements that we are doing in our product and how these can help some of these things and how we can help banks become a slightly stronger organization from a data perspective, from a security perspective, and how we can help with more regulatory compliances. So over to you here.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Amin, for giving us a short introduction. Before I begin my session, I would just like to give you one point that some few years back, an English divine said that 3 things deserve no mercy. One is hypocrisy, second is tyranny, and third is fraud. So hereabout, I'm going to present a slide deck where we will be explaining what are the advancements which we will be looking into, or which are the advancements which we're going to be offering very soon. Okay, so as every kind of product has a life cycle, a fraud solution also has a life cycle wherein everyone would want to understand from inception to the end how is it going to happen, how the solution would work, what are the bases on which we are going to actually portray, or what is it exactly going to offer. Because when we speak about a fraud solution, it can mean for anything. You can name it. A fraud can be any type of industry. It can be in a banking industry, it can be in a non-financial banking industry, any kind of industry you speak about. So there's a small life cycle which I would like to introduce to you all before I move ahead to it. So the first one speaks about prevention. Now, typically in prevention, the first step wherein as a vendor, we would like to inform that fraud is, the information is already available in your systems. All we got to do is detect it. Is that right? Does everyone agree to this? Thank you. So it's all about the timings here, wherein the first point which I have written down is about integration. So when we have the right integration with your systems, now these systems could differ. Now I'm sure most of you would have a better understanding because you all have worked with the compliance part, you all know what data is, which systems store these information. So let's take the most common example, which is the core banking solution. It has the maximum information with regards to your accounts, with regards to the transactions, and regards to the KYC. Additionally, moving ahead in time, there has been a lot of introduction of new systems which have been up and which are already running. As per our products, also we are offering most of them. So the main source is how do we integrate with the right systems. So we are offering something which processes information in nanoseconds, wherein the responses can be sent as soon as possible as the fraud has been detected. So the integration model is the most important, wherein volume, velocity, the variety of data, and the veracity, all of these 4 aspects would be considered. When I speak about volume, then it could be terabytes, it could be exabytes, just in nanoseconds when it comes to velocity. And when I speak of variety, it could be a lot of type of data. It could be a structured information, it could be a non-structured information, it could be a text, it could be an image, it could be a signature, any kind of format. Moving ahead to preemptive actions, the reason I put this here is to inform you that the fraud solution typically depends on two things. One is which solution can detect it, and the other way is whether you can take the right action at the right time, which is the most essential or the key part of a fraud detection module. So when I speak about preemptive actions, just let's take some real life examples. When I'm doing an online transaction, I'm asked for an OTP for an additional security. Or else if I try and goof up with some of the information, I'm asked another level of security. So these are some preemptive actions. It could be an email link confirmation, it could be a resetting of password, it could ask some additional questions, it could be a telephone call I receive. So all these actions would be defined well before we implement. So that comes down to the next part, which is the consulting and training. With the product offering, we won't only just giving you a fraud detection module, but there will be a detailed analysis which would have to be carried out during the gap stage, where we will be explaining each one of the modules to you, how it works, what are the preemptive actions which can be incorporated in the core banking or in the other core systems. So all of this would be completely taken care of. Moving ahead to the detection. Now, the first one, I think some of our AML customers will completely agree that fraud cases or putting up any case could be easily been identified. Right now, the transformation is moving from an offline to a real-time basis. That's what the move is. So when we speak about use cases, I can give you more than 9,000, 10,000 of them. There's no limit to it. But the idea here is that there are some things which a particular person will not be able to identify, even after having the use cases in place. So the objective is not having many use cases, but the objective is having nothing but still trying to identify a fraud. So that moves down to the next point, which is the predictive analysis. I'm sure Mr. Rajesh has already spoken a lot about predictive analysis throughout this session, and has already tried to give you most of all a good gist about what it is. So if I have to just put it up in the most simple words, for me it only means that something which I cannot perceive but may be abnormal or could be uncertain. So predictive analysis typically depends on data mining, how your data is. It tries to understand it, it tries to use cognitive analytics to use it or just perceive it as a human being itself. And of course, a whistleblower technology, most of us tend to forget it. It is also a good source to detect fraud cases. Maybe it's not widely used, but definitely moving ahead, I'm sure it's going to be one of the most important features. Moving ahead to the investigation model. With investigation model, we are offering an end-to-end case management system. Now, with respect to the outcomes, there could be multiple things. When in a fraud case, you may have some legal actions, you may have some legal activities which need to be carried out. So maybe we can design the flow in such a manner that it would help you to achieve those objectives as well. Something specific which we are trying to offer is an investigation analysis, wherein we try to give you a graphical analysis for each type of fraudulent activity, which will help you to detect something more essential or something which you may have missed out during the investigation. So I will definitely show you some of the examples. And yes, the relation and the transaction analysis, which is one of the most essential things where some information a naked eye cannot see. So definitely it's one of the most important things which is required. Moving ahead to the last quadrant, it speaks about predict and analyze. So this is where the space of machine learning comes into the picture, wherein all the information which you have analyzed through predictive analysis or you have analyzed through the known fraud scenarios will be used in such a manner that the machine learns and tries to derive more such kind of information, or rather I would say it just gets more intelligent. Most of the people would miss out one of the essential functionalities. Now, everyone, when I say anti-fraud solution, the first thing in everyone's mind would be, yeah, it should be real time, it should be real time. But there are some cases which are already done, there are some activities, there are some transactions which are completed, but nobody would want to revise them and get them back. But our solution here is trying to offer something different. Once the system has learned from certain patterns, we would want to revisit certain transactions to see whether if any previous past fraudulent activities were carried out. So it's one of the most essential parts, and we would be also helping you to analyze them as well. I will just give you a gist about the functional architecture so that everyone could be on the same page of understanding graphically how the system information will flow, what the system is going to actually do at the back end. Okay. Since integration is one of the most essential parts, so right now on the left hand side you would see there are a lot of legacy systems which would be integrated with our fraud solution. It could be the account opening, it could be the core banking, it could be the account clearing houses, it could be any kind of SWIFT operations or any kind of transactions, new, old, or any kind of technology which is coming in. The idea here is to receive this information and try and give you a right analysis or the right track to or the right essence for this information. So we have the information is going to be flowing on an online streaming that's on a real-time basis. The system will utilize predictive analysis to give you a real-time information or real-time analysis as you see. And we also will have event processing. So some information may not need a real-time analysis. Some information may need some time to analyze, maybe based on some certain rules which are virtually in nature. Once the information has been received, we have given about 3 actions which will be